Welcome to the Believe in Texans podcast alongside former Houston Texans wide receiver, 6-year NFL veteran Cecil III. I am Patrick Creighton, host of Area 45 on your flagship home of the Houston Texans, Sports Radio 610 in Houston. Cecil, we are now through 10 days of training camp for the Houston Texans, but the big news came down in the last 24 hours. One of their big free agent signings is not going to be joining them to start the season. Denico Autry, who was, I want to say, the first major player that they signed in free agency, suspended 6 games for violating the performance-enhancing drug clause of the CBA. Denico then released a statement stating that he was stunned by the fact that he had tested positive, hired a legal team. They did an investigation trying to find out what it was that could have caused him to test positive. It turns out it goes back to a prescription that a doctor wrote, that the pharmacy that made this particular prescription included an ingredient that caused him to fail the PED screen. And he didn't say what the medication was or what it was that it was being taken for, just that there was a separate medication that he was taking that turned out to include something that was on the NFL's, banned substances list. I want to get your thoughts on, the fact that, look, there's no recourse. People are like, well, why didn't he appeal? There's not really any appeal anymore. It's once the league hands down its judgment, it's very much a zero-sum game. But your thoughts on, the impact of losing Denico Autry for 6 games, and B, does there need to be a revision in the way that the NFL conducts these tests? Because I feel like the situation that Denico Autry is caught up in, there was no plausible means for him to be aware of this situation. So let's start with, what is the impact to Denico Autry being out 6 games for the Houston Texans?
You lost a big-time defensive lineman to start the season off. Your schedule is not easy. And when you bring in a guy, 34-year-old, who's been in the league a long time, understands how to be a pro, had one of his best years last year, consistent guy, day in and day out. You lose a pass rusher up the middle. You lose a guy that can help stop the run, and you lost a veteran lineman that can help the other D tackles / D ends in that room. And when you're suspended, you're not in the building. So the first 6 weeks, he will not be in the building at all, which is tough. And and I know it's 12 more weeks after that, or 11, whatever it is. But that first 6 weeks it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough. That first quarter of the season, quarter and a half of the season, you really are trying to get off to a good start, number one, right? But also, you're still building the chemistry. You're still building that time together on the field together, right? Because it's only, I guess this year is 3 preseason games, but normally it's 2 preseason games now. So he wouldn't have necessarily that time and that chemistry on the field to get, learn how to get the call from Shire, and then how to work with Daniil and whoever else is on the defensive line with him. And that's timing and continuity that he will not be able to get. So it's a huge loss in that sense. But also, I think I'm a guy's optimistic. I like to look at it, glass half full. He'll be fresh the last part, midway through and halfway for the last part of the middle of the season to the end. He'll be a fresh guy. He'll be able to come in and do his job, and I'm sure he'll do it well. But this hurts early on, and maybe we'll see him a lot Thursday or a lot in the preseason to make sure you get those reps in. Usually that type of stuff happens. Guys that are suspended or will not be able to play for whatever reason the first couple games, they get a lot of preseason action because they won't be with the team at all for a lot of the amount of games they've been suspended for. So it's going to hurt. He's somebody that I think everybody was counting on that defensive side of the ball to make plays. So we'll see who else can step up. Looking at the depth chart, there's a lot of young guys. But we'll see who can step up, and maybe there'll be a splash from a D tackle position when all the cuts are. I wouldn't be surprised when all the cuts happen that they go out and bring another D tackle or two in that can really help this defense out from week one and make an impact.
Now let's talk about how the NFL and this policy, the way this policy is implemented, right? So player basically has no recourse. If you fail the test, period, that's it. There's not like you can appeal it. You're not going to win an appeal. There's no way to win an appeal. It's 6 games. It's zero tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
There are also there's things that are on the banned substance list that are not actually PEDs.
Yes.
They're considered to be things that might mask if you are taking a PED. We have seen in the past guys who were taking fertility drugs fail PED tests. That's not quite enhancing the same performance, by the way. There seems to be this idea. I mean, I don't know what kind of medication that he was taking, nor do I know for what reason. And that's not. I mean, honestly, it's not necessarily our business, right? It's his health issue. But whatever it is, had enough of something on the banned substance list that caused him to fail a test. Now, I don't know what that substance was, but did that substance really increase his performance? I feel like we have now created a situation where if you are a football player in the NFL and somebody in a pharmacy decides, you know what, I'm in a crappy mood today, I'm just going to mess with some people, and they put a little something in your medication that shouldn't be there. Sorry, you failed. You have no recourse. I feel like this is putting players at an unfair risk. How is a player supposed to not trust his doctor?
Yeah.
So you go to the doctor, they know you're an NFL player. They know what the banned substance list is. They write you a prescription. There's no way you could possibly know every single thing that's in that prescription. Am I supposed to not trust my doctor? Am I supposed to, when I get my medication from the pharmacy, now I'm going to turn into Walter White and I'm going to have my home chemistry set and I'm going to drop it into this beaker and that beaker, and we're going to run it through the red stuff and the blue stuff to try to figure out what the hell's in there. There comes a point where feasibility has to come into play, and I don't believe it is practical that a player has to be deliberately mistrustful of a pharmacy receiving a medication that, for all intents and purposes, should not be something that's on a banned substance list in the NFL. This to me is a problem situation.
I got mixed feelings about this. From a player standpoint, if I'm going to the doctor to get a prescription for something for my health, I'm not thinking about what's on the banned substance list. If I don't do steroids, I'm not thinking about what's on the list, at all. So for his legal team to trace it back to that subscription is very frustrating, because it's when you're at the doctor and whatever that prescription was for, he's not going to pick that prescription and say, oh, I can't take this because it's so-and-so in it, and I can't take that because that's part of the banned substance. What if he needs that, right? And like you mentioned, is that particular substance, is that really a performance enhancer? Is that really going to make him stronger, faster, more explosive, pay more attention? I don't know. But at the same time, there are certain companies and products that you can work with, if that makes sense. So in Denico's case, it was kind of out of his hands at all, right? But in other cases, if you're taking any type of supplements or any protein or any drinks or anything like that, there's a specific company, and their labels are like NSF. If you go through this company, they have tons of everything that you may need to get ready for the season that are fully clean. Their company goes about it the right way, and you can use that. There's other companies like that too as well. So there's resources for you if you're down that lane, right? So that's where I get confused. I'm like, if a guy gets busted and he's been taking bad protein or even that, there's options for him, but at the same time, you're not tracing it. Like, you're not sitting there like, I need to look through the ingredients, or I need to test this ingredient to make sure there's nothing in the protein. If somebody doesn't do their job, how's that the player's fault? If somebody at that particular company in that factory did not do the good job, how is that the player's fault? That's where I get frustrated with. Like, you're saying this is a banned substance. There's 100 million things on the substance list. And if one of those things is off, if one of those things is on that particular substance, or somebody makes a mistake, now that player is missing 5 games, 4 games, 6 games. That is frustrating. That is hard to deal with as a player. I think they need to shorten the list. They need to make sure that there's so much science. There's so much you can get into. There's so many ways that they can figure out if this substance is really a substance that's an enhancer rather than a substance that's just maybe masking something or something else, right? And I think, too, you got to look at the history of the player. If the player is, failed once or twice, or is known, or whatever the case may be, it's different. But if this guy like a Denico, who's never been in trouble before, and then he has a prescription for something personal with health, like, come on, like 6 games, that's just a lot to me, because he's not getting paid. He can't be around the team. He's not around his coaches. He can't talk to anybody in the building as far as coaches and GM stuff like that. That's just harsh for me, from a player standpoint.
No, and I said, because like, I'm thinking about it is, okay, so this is a prescription type of situation where the product came from the pharmacy incorrectly. You mentioned supplements. What happens if, let's say, you're a player and you go to GNC, just for example, I'm not trying to slam GNC, all right, but you go to GNC and you pick up, say, oh, here's a new supplement, and you look on the ingredients list, and there is nothing on the ingredients list that is on the banned substance list, but you fail because whatever it is that tested positive is not listed in the ingredients. There's no plausible way, there's no realistic way for you to have known that taking that particular product was going to cause you to fail. But in the eyes of the NFL, too bad, so sad.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like, that's not beneficial to the game, in my opinion. Like, if they're gonna make decisions that are just, it's everything is zero sum, and we don't care how or why you failed, therefore you are suspended. It puts in like an undue burden on a player, because there's no way you can know about something if it's mislabeled. Are you supposed to expect that all products are mislabeled? Like, are you supposed to expect that your doctor is going to prescribe something to you that you can't have, or that he prescribes something to you can have, but the pharmacy is going to make it wrong? Like, this is what I mean. It can't. There has to be room for logic and common sense to apply. This isn't, hey, we took Star Caps and we didn't look at the ingredients. We just thought, hey, they're over the counter, they're fine. And then it turns out that there's things in here that I can't have. This is more like, remember when Dwayne Brown failed his PED test because he went to Mexico and he ate like a ton of red meat, and the rules and the laws in Mexico are different, and all the meat that he ate had a lot of steroids in it. Not the same kind that players would take, but had a lot of steroids in it because they put steroids into their cattle. He ate a ton of red meat, and it showed up in his test. And he was able to go back and show, hey, I didn't actually do anything. This came from red meat that I ate in Mexico. Well, today it would have been not our problem.
Yeah.
And he got 6 games.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, this is the common sense aspect that we're losing, because what is the purpose of giving away the common sense aspect for, well, you failed, we don't care, too bad? Like, how does that make the game better, safer, whatever? I don't think it does.
It doesn't, and that's a third of the season. Like, you're punishing a guy who's never been in trouble before when it comes to performance enhancers, and then he gets a prescription from his doctor completely out of his hand. He has nothing to do with the ingredients, right? Nothing to do with it. And you get him a third of the season gone for that? That, to me, that's just, going back to your point, the common sense part, right? The common sense part. Where does the common sense come in? Where does it sit in? Because a third of the season is crazy.
Well, Cecil, we are very close to the Hall of Fame game. This will be the first preseason game for the Texans this year. And the Texans have their first, we say, unofficial depth chart released of the season. And obviously, there are some players who are not going to play in this game who are listed at the top of the depth chart. But as far as your offensive starters are go, there are no surprises. It's C.J. Stroud. It's Joe Mixon, neither of whom are probably going to play. Joe Mixon's not even practicing. Your receivers are Nico, Stefan, and Tank. Dalton Schultz is the tight end. The offensive line is Laramie Tunsil, Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, Shaq Mason, Titus Howard. Laramie Tunsil, of course, not yet practicing, and he will probably not play in the preseason. Blake Fisher has been the backup for Laramie Tunsil, and it looks like he is going to be more than likely the person who starts it at left tackle. Some of the backups I thought were interesting. So on the running back depth chart, it goes Joe Mixon, Damian Pierce, Dare Gumbawale, Jawar Jordan. Then you've got Cam Akers, J.J. Taylor, and British Brooks. But the top four being Mixon, Pierce, Ogumbawale, and Jordan, which means, with Joe Mixon not practicing, and Joe probably will not practice for another week or so. Damian Pierce, Dare Gumbawale, and Jawar Jordan. Now, I know the preseason games, look, you get a lot of backups, a lot of 2s and 3s. But I feel like the person of those three who most needs to show what they're capable of is probably Jawar Jordan. Rookie back, first game experience with the team. If he's going to have a shot to try to climb up the ladder, I think it's important Jawar Jordan has a good showing.
I would agree with that. I think Dare needs to have a good showing too. When you bring a guy in like Cam Akers, who is a talented back, I know he has some injuries with his Achilles and knee and other things, but that dude is talented when it comes to Cam Akers. Not sure how many reps he'll get in preseason, but I think Dare needs to have a really good showing, whether it's on special teams, I think of course he'll do well on special teams, but really in the backfield. Can he tote the rock? Can he be a guy that gets a carry or two if Damian or if Joe can come in or gets, nicked up for a play? And Jawar, can he be a special teamer? Can he be back there on kickoff return, right? He did it at Louisville in college. Can he be the guy in a different type of kickoff return world now, right? This is a totally different world than what we're used to. It's a blank page for everybody. Mike Tomlin went on the air the other day on his interview and said, I'm going to be watching the Hall of Fame game just for the kickoff return. So if Jawar can have success in the kickoff return area, he may be a guy that can be able to stick around. So it's going to be interesting, those two in particular, Dare and Jawar, see what they can do. But I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Akers makes some plays in preseason. Make things interesting.
Dare is the backup kicker. He has to make the team. And for those of you wondering, yes, my daughter's giant stuffed husky is still behind me, sitting on the daybed because she has not decided what she's going to do with it. So there is still the giant stuffed husky behind me on the daybed here in the office. Other parts of the depth chart, the backup receivers are listed as Noah Brown, Robert Woods, and John Mechie III. Of those three, Mechie has had a very strong camp thus far. Yep. Noah Brown has had a good camp. The last couple of days, Noah Brown has made some plays. Ben Skoranek, Xavier Hutchinson, Steven Sims, they are all listed with the 3s. Of the guys listed with the 2s, Noah Brown, Robert Woods, John Mechie, who needs the biggest performance?
I think John Mechie needs to continue to show he is a player, right? I think he needs to continue to show, hey, I can go out here, I can play. He looks great in one-on-one. He looks great on team. He's having connection with Davis Mills, with CJ when he's in there at times. So I think he needs to continue to ascend because you want to really remind people, hey, you drafted me for a reason, right? This is third year. You drafted me for a reason. He can be a player. But I think Noah Brown is critical in the two. I think Robert Woods is gone no matter what. No offense to him. I just think the numbers wise and look at the age and what's going on. I think he'll be out of here. But I think Noah Brown, who had two really good games last year, I think 150 yards against Cincinnati and another 100-yard game back to back or near each other. I think he needs to have a good showing to prove like, hey, don't forget about me. I can make plays in the passing game. I know where I'm supposed to be. I have a connection with probably Davis and Case and really go out there and start playing well because the third string, those young guys can play. It's going to be a tight receiver room. And the guys that can show they can make plays and be available on special teams are the guys that are going to make the team. So I think out of that group two, I think Mechie needs to continue to ascend. I think he'll be in good shape, but Noah Brown really got to step up and show, hey, I can play some ball.
Cecil, as we look at the tight end room, which tight end do you think is more in danger of not being on the roster? Brevin Jordan or Tegan Catoriano?
Oh, Tegan easily. Even though Tegan has all the potential and he has bright spots throughout camp and bright spots through this time, Brevin made plays last year. And then was the Cleveland game? He took that 5 yard out down the sideline for a touchdown. Well, I can't remember what game it was, but Brevin is a guy. He lists as number 2 here. He's a guy I think is going to be safe. I think he is going to make it, no doubt about it. So I would definitely pick Tegan.
All right, as we flip to the defensive side of the ball, we mentioned Denico Autry is going to be suspended for the first 6 games. That makes your defensive tackles Foley Fatukasi and Mario Edwards, with Khalil Davis and Tim Settle behind them. Do you expect anybody is going to kind of rise up to the occasion and kind of be the leader of that group, or do you think that the Texans are going to more go to a rotation where they're just going to keep revolving those doors, trying to keep guys fresh, and see that they try to get just the freshest guys out there to try to make plays? How do you foresee them utilizing the defensive tackle position with Denico Autry out for the first 6 games?
Honestly, I think D-line is always a rotating door, right? You want to bring in fresh pass rushers. You want to bring in fresh guys that can stop the run. But when you are losing out on Denico, you're looking for a guy to step up. And Foley is the first guy that comes to mind. Had a really good year, a couple years in Jacksonville. I expect him to be kind of the leader in the room until Denico can come back. But I wouldn't be surprised if they find some young guys, whether it's Settle, Davis, Mario, to really rotate in and go about it. But I think Foley will be the guy that steps up, maybe not replace Denico, but can him and a few other guys can help create some of the same things Denico as one person can create in a group of 3 or 4.
All right, now this is something that I think is interesting, right? They list 3 linebackers as Aziz Al-Shire, Christian Harris, and Henry To'oTo'o. They list 3 corners, Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter with the ones on the outside. Des King is listed as the nickel. Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward at the safeties. Now, we've seen Jalen Petrie line up at linebacker. We've seen him line up in the nickel. We've seen Jalen Petrie all over the field. Do you think it is more likely that we see Jalen Petrie as a traditional safety, or do you think we see more Jalen Petrie getting moved all over the place, which means Kalen Bullock would get a lot more run as a safety per se?
That's interesting. I think off the top of my head, you use training camp and preseason to see, okay, how comfortable is Jalen at the nickel? How comfortable is Jalen at linebacker? How comfortable is he at safety? Where is he best at? Is he best at back deep in safety? Is he best closer to the line of scrimmage? Like, what is his skill set? What is his assets? What's the best coverage for him? Is he really good in man? Is he not good in man? That's the time in training camp. That's what you want to see, right? So in training camp, that's not a surprise. He's doing all those things. But by the time season comes, and then also when he's there in those different positions, you got Kalen somewhere else, right? As that deep safety, really good long, can go from sideline to sideline decently well at USC. So I think Jalen will end up in his normal position at safety until Kalen shows that he's officially ready for the NFL type speed, right? Practice speed is different than preseason speed. Preseason speed is different than regular season, and regular season different than playoffs. It's all completely different. So I would think Jalen stays back in his normal position, and then maybe when Kalen is ready, When Bullock is ready, then they may move him around or whatever the case may be. But I think Jalen will stay where he's at.
Ultimately, who do you think winds up with the least amount of playing time between Kalen Bullock, Des King, and Henry Toto?
Ooh, I would say. I'm looking at the. I would say Kalen Bullock right now. I think Henry is a guy that can make plays. Henry's the Alabama guy. He's that linebacker room. They're going to learn so much from Algier and Denico. I get Denico and Demico mixed up, but from Demico, that he'll be able to be on the field and make plays. I think Kalen is going to be a transition for him. It's hard as a rookie DB to come in and make a real impact as a rookie. It's hard, right? And I think D King is just really good at the nickel. He's really good at what he does. He's physical at the point of attack. He can make plays. He understands the game. He communicates at a high level. I think D King will definitely get his reps at nickel. So I would say Kalen right now.
See, I'm with you. I think Dez is a very underrated player.
He is, man. He
I
is.
think he's a really good nickel corner. I think he's got a nose for the ball. I think he finds ways to make plays. You remember when they brought him back last year? He played one snap in his first game, and it was a goal line stuff. I mean, he's just he makes plays. I really like Des King as a player. I think that I agree with you about Kalen Bullock as far as the early season goes. But I also think the Texans really like that three safety alignment. And if they play that three safety alignment, that is going to come at the expense of Henry Toto. Because as good as Toto may wind up being, he's not on the same level as Aziz and as Christian Harris.
No, he's not.
Now, if Christian Harris is unable to play, that's going to change the story a little bit. But I do think we're going to see a lot of three safety, two linebacker looks from the Texans as, Aziz Al-Shire and Christian Harris. These are guys who play sideline to sideline. They're all over the place. They've got, great instincts on the ball. And I think that if you go with that three safety look, you then can utilize Jalen closer to the line and utilize Bullock as your center fielder per se. And I think that gives them more speed, more flexibility, ability to match up differently with the offense when they start, trying to go into different formations. I think it gives them more flexibility. I don't know that that's something that happens right off the bat, but I do think as we get, through the first 4 or 5 games of the season, I think we will see more of that three safety alignment.
How do you feel about Jimmy Ward? You think Jimmy Ward is in a position where he's safe?
I think Jimmy's making the team. I think the biggest thing with Jimmy is got to be healthy, right? I think that was a big part of the issues that Jalen Petrie had a year ago, was that he was being asked to learn a new system, and he's being told, "Hey, look, the guy who's going to be next to you, he's going to be your leader. He's going to be the quarterback," but he wasn't there. And because of that, you had none of these other guys had never played in the system. I think they just didn't know what to do a lot of times. I think their communication struggled. I think that ultimately led to their confidence wavering and just being out of position, not knowing who to hand off to and when. And I also think it wound up putting Jalen in positions that he's not best to succeed in. I think if Jimmy is healthy and able to play, it really changes the entire back of the defense. He's the quarterback back there. He's the guy who's, calling the plays. He's the guy who's getting guys in position. He's the one who's kind of, directing traffic back there. And when he's not there, you see the leadership void that it winds up being there without him. But now they're all in the system for a second year. So they should be able to overcome the communication issues. They should be able to overcome, who's supposed to be where and when if Jimmy's not there. But I do think if he is there, the defense is so much better if he's on the field. I don't think he's in danger of losing his roster spot, but I do think that last year his absence really hurt the Texans' defensive secondary, and I'm hoping that this year they would be better capable of how to conduct play back there without it.
I think Jimmy is the like there's three levels on defense, right? Defensive line, linebacker, DBs. I think he's the captain of the DBs. I truly do. But what worries me about Jimmy as he gets older, he missed a lot of time last year. And when you miss a lot of time, that starts putting things in other people's heads, the higher ups, like, okay, does he still, because your best ability is your availability. So if he can't stay healthy this year, I'm wondering, do you move Kellen Bullock to where he is, or maybe Petrie back to where he is, and that kind of, if they play well together, does that take Jimmy off the field? Right? I agree with you. He's going to be on the roster. He's the captain of the DBs back there. Every time he talks, it makes me want to listen. Like, okay, he knows he's talking about. He gets me excited. He's a fun guy. But that health part worries me a tad bit, because you're right. When he left the field, the communication was an issue. The not knowing what's going on, the different coverage. He was the veteran when it comes to being in that particular defensive style. He was the veteran in that moment, right? He was the guy missing out there. But hopefully in year two, like you mentioned, in the same defense, these guys can know where kind of the mishaps were last year and be better this year. But Jimmy's a big piece, I think, coming into this year. That if he's healthy, he's going to be great. If he's not, I'm a little bit worried.
So Jimmy got you ready to turn in your teens number for a 20s number. And
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
but, listen, I think they have a lot of talent. Listen, Kamari Lassiter has really, he has really equated himself well during camp so far, and he has gone after it with Stephon Diggs. He's gone after it with Nico.
Yeah.
They've gone at him, and they have thrown their best receivers at him, and he's in there, he's fighting, and you love to see that from a rookie, that he's not backing down, he's not afraid. He will go up there and he will challenge their best receivers, and this is just normal course of action for him.
That's what you want to see from a guy that you drafted high in the second round, right? But that's what you want to see out of a guy that plays the cornerback position. That's one of the hardest positions to play. You're playing backwards against some of the best athletes in the world. You have no idea what they're doing. You got to kind of react and just go out there and compete. But he's going out there competing every single snap, every single down. He's excited. He's into the game. He's not backing down from big names, from guys that just got paid, from 10-year veterans. Has been the most durable, one of the best receivers in the league. He doesn't care who you are. His nickname is Lockdown, and he plans on locking you down every single time he steps up to the plate. Now, I love that about him, man. I love his attitude, and it's contagious. It really is contagious when you see him out there competing that way. And I think what's going to help him, what helped Derek Stingley last year was having a veteran presence off the field, which was Jonathan Joseph last year, right? Helping him in was his technique and details and stuff like that. But now that Derek has had some big time success in the NFL, he's giving all his knowledge to a guy like Kamari. He's going to just continue to ascend. So I'm excited to see Kamari, man. I want to see him go against some of the best guys in the league week in and week out. And the pressure's not going to be on Kamari. The pressure going to be on Stingley, in my opinion. So if you're the number two guy, the pressure's on Stingley. He'll probably, if they choose to follow, Stingley will follow the best guy, right? Stingley will have the most pressure on him, whereas Kamari, you go out there and you playing. You just go out there and play against the number two, number three guy, play your best, compete. Just listening to the mic'd up of Denico Ryan the other day and how excited he was and the stuff he was saying about Kamari, like, hey, that kid comes to compete every single day. Every single rep, he's out there competing to the high. He doesn't care who you are. That's what you want from a cornerback, man. Somebody that has like a blind to the name tag on the back of your jersey and say, hey, I'm coming at you no matter what. And that's what he's been doing every day at practice.
Cecil, you mentioned, Kamari Lassiter goes by the locksmith, and he wears the little lock, the padlock on his chain. So let me ask you, where do you stand on guys giving themselves nicknames?
I'm against it. I'm 110% against self-given nicknames. I like the guy. I feel like you have to earn your nickname. Somebody has to give you the nickname, whether it's Tank because he had a big head. His mama said he had a big head when he was younger, and that's why his name is Tank, or whatever it is. But you have to be given a nickname. Now, if you give yourself a nickname, you better live up to it. Like you better live up to it. And so far, it's been good for Kamari. So he gets a thumbs up and a half from me.
So it's okay to give yourself a nickname as long as you earn it.
If you earn it. If you earn it, because if not, we got other nicknames for you, and they're not going to be pleasant.
They are what we call derogatory.
Oh
I
man.
distinctly remember a former cornerback for the New York Giants named Elvis Patterson, who had the worst nickname a DB could ever have.
Oh wow.
Toast.
What
His nickname was Toast.
was that from him getting toasted?
He got
Oh,
burned all the
that's
time.
terrible. No, that's terrible.
But
That's
that is
terrible.
like that was like the worst nickname you could ever have. His nickname was Toast
Terrible.
because he always got burned.
Terrible. Terrible. Oh, Lord have mercy.
All right, Cecil. Thursday is the Hall of Fame game, and the Texans are going to have their very first Hall of Famer get inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton in Andre Johnson. As someone who played the wide receiver position in the NFL for 6 years, who is a former Texan, wanted to get your thoughts on Andre Johnson going into the Hall, his credentials for going into the Hall, and what it means for the Texans franchise and their fans to finally see one of their own go in with the gold jacket.
Andre Johnson, honestly, in Jacksonville, I used to study his film a lot because we play each other twice a year, right? So you kind of see the defensive side of the ball. But when I was playing in Jacksonville, he was obviously one of the best receivers in the NFL. And my dimensions weren't the same as his dimensions. I just liked his game, his physicality, him being that size, 6'3", 220 plus pounds, and be able to run any route on the route tree. You don't see that. Mostly, if you're a taller, bigger guy, you're limited in what you can do, right? If you're based on your size, you kind of can guess what the guy can do. He could do it all. And I was always told, and this is Chris Carter actually told me this, who actually I believe is the one that gave Andre Johnson his gold jacket, knocked on his door and gave it to him in his home. I was told by Chris Carter, the Hall of Fame means they cannot tell the story of the game within your era, without mentioning your name. They cannot tell the story of the game and the time period that you played without mentioning your name. And the time period that he played, there's no way, absolutely no way, you could talk about anybody in the receiver position without mentioning Andre Johnson, one of the best receivers to ever play the game. Super consistent. I'll never forget one of my favorite games of his. Actually, I was on the other team. 2012, I think it was. Jacksonville Jaguars versus Houston Texans. And Justin Blackmon was on the Jacksonville Jaguars with me. He went off for like 230 something yards. And then Andre Johnson went off for like 200, almost 50 yards and a couple touchdowns. And he ended the game on a screen pass for like 50 yards, and the Houston crowd's going nuts in overtime. Going nuts. Ended the game like that. And when you have a guy that's so humble, doesn't say much to the media, doesn't say much to, it's kind of like the opposite of the diva receiver, right? It's a hard worker, gonna bust his butt, gonna show up and play, make the tough catch, goes over the middle. It was literally nothing on the field he cannot do. One hand catch, two hand catch, feet catch, gets pounded by tons of people in the middle of the field, still running and tumbling and getting in the end zone. He was just a special human being. And I think it gets overlooked. I think he should have been in first ballot. That's just my humble opinion. But it gets overlooked how special he was. His numbers speak for itself. I mean, literally speaks for itself. He didn't play with an all-star. No offense to Matt Schaub or anybody else, but he didn't play with a Hall of Fame quarterback. He didn't. And he was still making these plays. It didn't matter who was covering him. It didn't matter who was against him. It doesn't matter what weather he was in, who they were playing against, double team, triple team. He was going to make the play. He was going to come down with the football. And the crazy thing about it with those type of players, you know they're going to get the ball, and you still can't stop them. You know the game plan is, hey, we're going to get Andre Johnson the ball. When you go into a game week, right, they call them game breakers. So I'm playing against Andre, and it's a Wednesday, the first official day of the week, right? And it's on the screen, Andre Johnson. You got to stop him. They're going to give him the ball with different ways. He has this many yards so far, this many catches, and you still can't stop him. Unbelievable. Now, after the game, after I retired and I actually came to Houston when he was leaving. He finished up in the thing in Tennessee and the Colts. But when I was there, when I mean his teammates loved him. I literally loved him. The coaches loved him. It was like, wait, well, I'm like, so why did he leave? Like, why did he ever, like, what's going on? They could not say nothing bad about Andre. I've never heard, not from one person, anything bad about Andre Johnson. And that just speaks to the human being that he is, and what he's done for the community. Now, the fans, the Houston Texan community, everybody that loves the Texans, the McNairs, the organization, they have done nothing but honor him, man. And I'm sitting there watching it, and it's like a humbling experience for me how much they show their appreciation for Andre and how much Andre really is loved by the city. So for him to be the first Hall of Famer in Texans history, it could be no better person. It could be no better player. It's probably nobody more deserving right now than Andre Johnson. So it's going to be exciting to see him Thursday night. I'll be at the game. Him get to walk out and be acknowledged. But on top of that, being the following day, I think Thursday, Friday or Saturday, really being inducted into the Hall of Fame is going to be pretty cool.
Of course, there's only one reason why Andre Johnson ever left the Texans. Rhymes with Schmill O'Crian.
Yeah, man, that was crazy.
Like, hey, we think that you're going to be a number 3 receiver and get like 500 yards this year. Yeah, that didn't quite go over with Andre. Can't imagine why.
Nah, man.
Especially after he was coming off a season where he had 85 catches for 936 yards and is being told, yeah, we think that you're like at best a third receiver and we're going to, push you down. And, Andre Johnson, 5 times over 100 catches, twice led the league in catches. He was 7 times over 1,100 yards receiving, twice led the league in receiving, 3 times led the league in yards per game, the 7-time Pro Bowler and a 4-time All-Pro. And as you mentioned, he did this without the benefit of a Hall of Fame quarterback or even without a, All-Pro quarterback.
Yeah.
Matt Schaub, and again, I think Matt Schaub had a very nice career in the NFL, but Matt Schaub was the best quarterback he ever played with.
Yep.
And, a lot of other guys who put up the kind of big numbers. I mean, Andre is 11th in yardage and 10th in receptions all time.
Yeah.
Most everybody ahead of him played with a megastar future Hall of Fame quarterback. Andre did not have that. Andre is what we called quarterback proof. It didn't matter who the quarterback was. Andre was going to get his yards.
Yep.
You couldn't stop him regardless. I mean, you could have gone and grabbed the quarterback in North Dakota State, and Andre was going to get 100 yards. And I think that's one of the things that is indicative of the greatness of Andre Johnson was that he was not dependent on a great quarterback. He made the quarterback better. Mm. And, there are some other guys who I think are very deserving of being in the Hall of Fame. Guys like Reggie Wayne, guys like Torrey Holt, who were great receivers, but their quarterbacks were stars.
Yeah.
They did not have to make their quarterback better. Their quarterback probably helped to make them better. Mm. Andre never had that. He made everybody he played with better. And I think that is very much indicative of why he is someone wearing a gold jacket and is going to be inducted on Thursday formally. And other guys who I think are also very deserving are not quite there yet.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
He is former Houston Texans wide receiver, 6-year NFL veteran, Cecil Shorts III. I am Patrick Creighton, host of Area 45 on Sports Radio 610, your flagship home of the Houston Texans. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Believe in Texans podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And Cecil, this game is going to be played on Thursday. Friday sounds like a good day to have another podcast.
Absolutely. Little recap.
Look forward to the next episode of the Believe in Texans podcast on Friday afternoon. We will look forward to the Texans playing on Thursday night, the Hall of Fame game. Look forward to Andre Johnson being formally inducted as the very first member of the Houston Texans organization into Canton. And we will see you on Friday. Until then, go Texans.